Okay, welcome back. Here I wanted to talk about rational equations. Now, as you know, an equation is essentially an expression that has an equal sign, which means instead of simplifying, you are actually solving. A rational is a glorified fraction. What it means is that instead of you dealing with just a single number in your numerator and denominator, now we are dealing with having expressions as part of your numerator or denominator. In order to solve a rational equation, there is a few steps that you have to follow. The first is you have to have common denominators between both of your rationals. What makes it different from when we're simply simplifying is once you find that common denominator, you are actually going to multiply your entire equation by that LCD. That is going to allow you to set up and solve your rational. Now, the other thing that we have to do at the end that we're not normally used to is we have to do this check our solutions piece. And the reason for that is because of the fundamental rule that fractions cannot have 0 in the denominators. Well, the same holds true for a rational. You cannot have a 0 in your denominator. So let's look at an example here. I have 3 over m plus 2 over m equals 4m minus 4 over m squared minus 4. So the first thing that we have to do is find a common denominator. And before I get there, I have to factor my m squared part down into its pieces. So when I do that, m is going to be m and m. Because my last sign is negative, it means I have one positive, one negative. And I need factors of 4 that when combined give me 0. Well, that means my factors have to be the same value, so 2 and 2. In looking at all three fractions, I can state an LCD. My least common denominator is going to be m times an m plus 2 times an m minus 2. Now that I know my LCD, I have to multiply my entire equation by it. So I have m times m plus 2 times m minus 2, and I'm going to multiply this by my 3 over m plus 2 plus 2 over m equals 4m minus 4 over my m plus 2 times my m minus 2. So when I look at my first fraction, I have to multiply the LCD by that. So notice here my denominator goes away and the only thing that's left behind is m and m minus 2. So this first part is going to become 3 times m minus 2. Because the m plus 2 piece disappears. If we look at the second fraction, the m part disappears and leaves behind the m plus 2 and the m minus 2. We then have equals, and again, if you look, the m plus 2, m minus 2 will disappear and leave behind just the m. So this becomes 4m minus 4 times m. Now that we've done that, notice my rationals are all gone. I'm just left now with a single equation, and so I can go ahead and simplify and solve. To do that means I have to start combining everything back together. So I have 3m times m gives me a 3m squared. 3m times negative 2 is a negative 6m. Now, the other thing that I have here is I have this m plus 2 part. Now, normally you would have to FOIL that together. However, if you paid attention, we already did that. We actually did it in the very beginning. Which means don't work harder, work smarter. This m plus 2, or m squared minus 4 is going to be what you get if you FOIL together m plus 2 and m minus 2. So this is really going to be plus 2 times m squared minus 4. Then I'm going to have 4m squared minus a 4m. The last thing I have to do is I need to distribute, so the 2 has to go into both. So this is 3m squared minus 6m plus 2m squared minus 8 is equal to 4m squared minus 4m. Combine my terms. I have 3m squared plus a 2m squared gives me 5m squared minus 6m minus 8 gives me 4m squared minus 4m. I have to move these, so because this one's positive says I have to subtract, so I'm going to subtract it from its proper spot. I also have to move this back end because it is already negative, means I have to add. So I have to add it to the proper place. So I have 5m squared minus 4m squared leaves me with m squared. Negative 6 plus 4 is a negative 2m. And then I have minus 8 equals 0. I still have to continue solving, so this is going to be broken down into my factors. So I have m and m. My back term is negative, so I have one positive, one negative, and I need factors of 8 that give me negative 2. Well, my factors of 8 would be 2 and 4. Because my 2 is negative, the bigger factor is negative, so this is 4 and 2. So then I have m plus 2 is equal to 0, so m equals negative 2. And I have m minus 4 is equal to 0, so m equals 4. Now this is the point where a lot of students stop. However, there is one very important thing that has to be done. You must check your solutions. And the reason for this piece here is because of the biggest rule that we have with fractions, and those say you cannot have a 0 in your denominator. So to check your solution says you have to go all the way back up to the beginning. So we are going to come back up to our original equation where we have 3 over m plus 2 plus 2 over m equals 4m minus 4 over m squared minus 4. And the first thing that we have to do is we need to check if m can equal negative 2, and then we have to check if m can equal 4. So the way we do that is we take our m value and we plug it in. So we're going to have 3 over negative 2 plus 2 plus 2 over negative 2 is equal to 4 times negative 2 minus 4 all over negative 2 squared minus 4. If we look, this right here is going to reduce down, and what this is going to give me is it's going to give me 3 over 0. By fraction rules, we cannot have a 0 in the denominator. Therefore, m cannot be negative 2. Now, the other thing that we have to check is you have to check if m equals 4. So again, we're going to have 3 over 4 plus 2 plus 2 over 4 is equal to 4 times 4 minus 4 all over 4 squared minus 4. In looking at all of these denominators, since none equals 0, the solution m equals 4 works. So therefore, the only solution to the rational is m equals 4. And this is our answer. Okay. So at the end of the day, you always need to make sure that you are checking your answers to be sure that you have the proper one. Okay. Let's look at another one. Here I have 4x plus 12 minus x squared minus 9 equals 3x minus 9. So again, the first thing I have to do is find at least common denominator. So 4x plus 12 can reduce down by pulling a 4 out, which makes it x plus 3. When I have x squared minus 9, that reduces down to x plus 3 times x minus 3. And 3x minus 9, if you pull a 3 out, becomes x minus 3. So what I actually have here is I have 5 over 4 times x plus 3 minus 6 over x plus 3 times x minus 3 equals 5 over 3 times x minus 3. When we look at this, your LCD is going to become 4 times 3 times x plus 3 times x minus 3. So I'm going to multiply this whole equation by that LCD number. Okay. So I have my 4 times 3, x plus 3, x minus 3, times 5 over 4 times x plus 3, minus 6 over x plus 3 times x minus 3 is equal to 5 over 3 times x minus 3. I have to multiply all the way through. So when I look at this first one, the 5 is going to come through. 4 and x plus 3 goes away, leaves behind 3 and x minus 3. Then I'm going to subtract the 6. If I look at my second one, the x plus 3 and x minus 3 go away and leave behind a 4 times a 3. Then I have 5. I have 3's go away and x minus 3 goes away. And so here I'm left behind with 4 and x plus 3. My rationals have all disappeared, which make life easier, and now all I have to do is simplify. So I have 5 times 3 is going to be a 15 times x minus 3. Then I have 6 times 4 times 3. and that is going to give me minus 72. 5 times 4 is 20 times x plus 3. Distribute everything through, and I have 15x minus 45 minus 72 is equal to 20x plus 60. I need to combine everything, and when I like to combine stuff, I like to start with just one side of an equation, so I would start here. And I have negative 45 minus 72 is going to give me a 15x minus 117 equals 20x plus 60. In this case, I'm solving for x, so I'm going to take my 15x and I'm going to move it to keep my x positive. Because it is positive, to move it says I have to subtract. So at the same time, I'm then going to take my plus 60 and move it. Again, because it's positive, to move it says I have to subtract. So this means I'm going to end up with negative 117 minus 60 is equal to 20x minus 15x. 117 minus 60 is negative 177 is equal to 5x. Then I need to divide everything by 5. So we get negative 177 over 5 is equal to x. Now, normally you always have to check your work. But let's go ahead and look at these. If I want to look at what is going to make these denominators 0, if you look at the first one, what makes this denominator 0 is a negative 3. If you look at the middle one, it's the same. It's either negative 3 or positive 3, and if you look at the last one, it's positive 3. The answer that I found is a negative 177 over 5. Obviously, that's not 3, therefore that would be your solution. Alright, one more. Again, you have to start with the least common denominator. So I have 3n plus 9. Pull a 3 out, leaves you with n plus 3. I then have a 2n plus 4. So pull a 2 out, leaves you with n plus 2. And then I have an n. So in this case, I've got 2 over 3 times n plus 3 plus 3 over 2 times n plus 2 is equal to 1 over n. My least common denominator here is going to be n times 3 times 2 times n plus 3 times n plus 2. So what you should be able to see is that your least common denominators can be as small or as large as needed in order to get the job done. So again, I have to multiply this whole thing by this LCD term. So if I look at the first one, 3 and n plus 3 go away. So 2 is left behind, times 2 times n plus 2. I then have to look at the next one, which is 3, and here 2 and n plus 2 go away, leaves behind 3 times n plus 3. In the last one, I have a 1. The n goes away and leaves behind 3 times 2 times n plus 3 times n plus 2. I have to reduce each. So if we start with this first one, 2 times 2 is 4, so I have a 4n times n plus 2. Distribute everything through. 4n times n is a 4n squared. 4n times 2 is a plus 8n. If I look at the second one here, 3 times 3 is a 9n times n plus 3. So this is going to add in 9n squared plus 27. Last is the back part here. So this is going to be 1 times 3 times 2, which is 6, times n plus 3 times n plus 2. So this is 6 times n squared plus 5n plus 6. Distribute your 6 in, gives you a 6n squared plus 30n plus 36. So overall, what I actually have here is I have combined my terms. So 9 plus 4 gives me a 13n squared plus 8n plus 27 is equal to 6n squared plus 30n plus 36. On each side I have a quadratic. In order to solve quadratics, you got to set equal to 0. So I'm going to take all of these and move them to the other side. All of them are positive, so I have to move each one by subtraction. 13 minus 6 gives me a 7n squared. 8 minus 30 gives me a negative 22n. And then I have 27 minus 36, which is going to give me a negative 9. So here, I apologize, up here this was actually 27n. So that is going to change a little bit. So here, this is actually going to become 8 plus 27, which is really 35n. When I subtract 30, this is going to leave me with 5. So this is 7n squared plus 5n and then this is going to be minus 36 equals 0. So notice it's very, very easy, especially when distributing through, to drop a variable off. Okay, obviously I am only human, so it happens, mistakes happen, and if you do find a mistake in one of my videos, please let me know. So you can see this correction is a lot different from where we were headed. Okay, the numbers are very different. The approach that we would have to use from this point forward was going to be the same. But while you're doing your work, you need to make sure that you are checking your work as you go, so that you haven't overstepped or missed something along the way. Here, in order to solve this, you have to use the quadratic formula. Using the quadratic formula says that you have to identify a, b, and c. So here a is 7, b is 5, c is negative 36. And the formula itself is going to be negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And this is what say x or n or whatever is going to equal. So once you input into your formula, what you should come out with is that n is equal to -5 plus or minus the square root of 1033 divided by 14. I employ you to plug these values into the quadratic formula and double check my work. Make sure you come up with the same thing that I received. If you come up with something different, I welcome your questions or statements or inquiries. But this is essentially everything that you need to know about being able to solve rational equations. So if you have any questions, as always, please make sure you let me know. Otherwise, make sure to keep smiling. Have lots of fun with your math. Relax, double and triple check your work. And as always, I'll see you next time.